Welcome to Beyond the Next Chapter. I am your host, Whitney Clark, and this week we are joined by an author whose name is synonymous with crime fiction, thrillers, and mysteries. Karin Slaughter is joining us today, and she's out with her latest book, We Are All Guilty Here. Slaughter is a New York Times best-selling author who's sold more than 40 million of her books across the world in 120 countries, and some of her novels have been turned into popular TV shows and movies. So, Karin, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
This is your 25th book. How does it feel to be coming out with number 25?
It feels like it took a while, but also that it happened very quickly. I feel very lucky that I'm able to keep writing and support myself with writing, and that I get to talk to people like you.
I love it. And we love that you're here. So tell us a little bit about what readers can expect in the new book.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of twists and turns, but at the heart of the story, it's about a family, Emmy Clifton and her father, Gerald, and they're both in the policing. He's the sheriff of Clifton County, and she's a deputy. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the book, but it starts with probably one of the most terrible crimes anybody can imagine, and that's the abduction of two teenage girls.
Certainly so. I think there was a really big twist almost at like the halfway point that my jaw dropped. I thought, wait, what? Which I loved. We love those unexpected twists. And this book is set in North Falls. This is a really small town. Why do you like to have these types of books set in small towns, fictional small towns like North Falls?
I live in Atlanta, and I got to say, where I go to write, I have a cabin in the North Georgia mountains. I'm much more afraid in that rural county up in the North Georgia mountains than I am in Atlanta. Statistically, I'm more likely to be a victim of the crime in the city, but just being surrounded by nature, and it gets dark at night, and there's not a lot of light pollution, and it can get scarier up in the mountains than it is down in Atlanta. And I think we all have this sense of these small towns as being safe places, but then we actually get there and it's kind of scary because we don't know what to expect.
Yeah, totally. I'm kind of on the same page as you, is that I get more scared in some of the small towns being out in the middle of the nowhere as someone who lives in a big city in Phoenix. How long did it take you to write this book?
I thought about it for quite a while before I sat down and wrote it. So just physically writing it was maybe 4 or 5 months, but thinking about it was 2 years and plus coming, because I really wanted to make sure I knew the characters, I knew the setting. There's a lot of world building. And I also got the opportunity to do something I didn't do with Will Trent and with my Grant County series, is I knew going in it was going to be a series. So I was able to plant a lot of future story seeds that will grow into books.
Do you enjoy writing series versus standalone books?
I like both for different reasons. It's really, I'm going to write a Will Trent when I finish the second book in the North Falls series. I do enjoy going back to familiar settings and familiar characters, but sometimes it's just nice to do a standalone and do something completely new and surprise my readers.
So you're going to write another Will Trent book. We know that it's a TV series as well. What is it about that series that you think really spoke to so many readers and watchers?
The one thing that's carried very carefully from the TV show and the books is Will's heart. And Ramon Rodriguez does such a wonderful job of nailing that character from the books in a way that you really feel for him. You understand his motivations. You get this sense of his need for his found family, Faith, his partner, and Angie, for better or for worse, his ex-partner. And I love that I've been able to do both of those things in the books, and I mean in the TV show that were so important to me in the books.
Yeah. That's so cool. So in We Are All Guilty Here, as we've mentioned, it's set in a small town. Emmy is one of the main characters. Tell us a little bit about Emmy, what she's up against, what readers can expect with this particular character in particular.
Well, when we meet her, she's in her early 30s and she's struggling to raise her son. She's in a marriage that's crumbling. her parents are getting older and she's starting to have to take care of them. So I think in a lot of ways, she's very relatable to a lot of my readers who are going through the same thing, raising children, trying to do their job, take care of their parents, all of these things that women have to juggle. And then in the middle of that, she has this case happen where not just two girls are abducted, but one of the girls is the stepdaughter of her very best friend from kindergarten, Hannah, and they've been really close all their lives, and this really tears them apart. And the novel is about the fallout from that crime and how they handle that, how they navigate the relationship, what happens with her marriage and her son, and all these other things wrapped up in a page-turning thriller.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned at the top of the podcast, you were talking a little bit about how there's, some unexpected twists and turns, and this features a crime that's just, it sounds cliche, but truly every parent's worst nightmare, an abduction of some kind, and that's what police are trying to sort out. Throughout the book, you have statistics as well about abductions. What kind of research did you have to do for this book?
I'm very lucky that I have a lot of retired GBI agents, Georgia Bureau of Investigation agents, who help me with things. And, one of them put me on to the Centers for Missing and Exploited Children, which is a wonderful organization. Unfortunately, it's an organization that has to exist because so many children are abducted. But, it's very rare to have a stranger abduction. Usually it's an uncle or a pastor or a parent or someone who's already in the child's life, an acquaintance, a neighbor who has access to the child who abducts them. So, we all talk about stranger danger, but we ought to talk about, having a relationship with your child where if anything happens, they feel comfortable enough to say, hey, this is Uncle Bob, or, my youth pastor made me feel very uncomfortable, and having those conversations as opposed to talking about what would happen 1% of the time, I think is very valuable.
Is it difficult for you to write about these topics that can be difficult to read about?
It is. One thing that I'm very mindful of when I write all my books is that these are crimes that happen to real people. Particularly when I write about gendered violence. I do kill a lot of men in my books, but no one seems to care as much. But I know that there are women who have suffered assault. I know that women live in abusive relationships. I know, men as well. And so I'm really conscious of that as I write, and actually what it does to their families when this happens, even if they survive. What are their lives like? That's my job as a crime writer, is not to just write about the crime, but write about the humanity behind the crime.
What do you do if maybe you're writing a book like this and you need a break, you need sort of like just a mental break? What are the things that you do to kind of keep the peace, if you will?
Well, I'm a big believer in a nap. That's one of my favorite things to do. Just take a 30-minute nap and clock out of the world. I love reading. I get on the treadmill. I have a rowing machine. I love to row or go for a walk, just the same tools that anybody uses when their job is a little stressful. Just take themselves outside of it and relax and try to take your mind off it.
What kind of books do you like to read for fun?
All kinds of stories. I'm reading Murderland right now, and it's really interesting. It's about, the rise of serial killers in the 1980s, like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy and Ed Kemper and people like that. But I love historical fiction. I love reading science fiction. Really anything that's a story well told, I'm always interested in.
And speaking of books, you have a bookshelf behind you. Are those your books, or are those other authors and things you're reading right now?
Well, some of them are my books, but most of them are other authors that I've enjoyed. Some of it's for research. Some of it's just fun stuff that I found when I was traveling.
I love that. Are you a physical book, e-reader, audiobook reader, or all of the above?
All of the above. I love when I'm traveling to be able to take my digital reader and just read a book or switch to listening to it. When I'm home, I like to have the physical book, though.
Yeah. And you live in Atlanta, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what is it like traveling for work? I mean, do you look forward to going on a book tour? What is it like for you to meet your readers?
Well, I think you'd probably question my sanity if I said that I love being on airplanes all the time. But I love meeting my readers. I just came back from the Netherlands and I was in London for a couple of weeks to tour with this new book. It came out there ahead of the US publication. And it's great to meet my readers. It's always great to go to bookstores and libraries and just, check in with people I've been seeing year after year as I've written my books.
Yeah. And speaking of libraries, I was reading on your website that you have a project called Save the Libraries Project. Tell me a little bit about why that's so important to you and what it is.
Well, it's incredibly important. I started it at the economic downturn in '08. And what we do is we give block grants, not just in the United States, but internationally to library systems that are in need. And primarily, I focus my charitable work on my local library, but we've done, some in Missouri, some in Puerto Rico, some, just all across the United States. We've helped libraries who need help. Particularly now, I'm really concerned about libraries. There's been a lot of vitriol and hatred directed towards libraries and librarians, which I don't understand. I thought it was the one thing we as Americans could all agree on is that libraries and reading and learning are good things. And so what we're doing now is we're supporting systems that are standing up to book burners, basically. I mean, if you look through history, there's never been a time in the history of humanity where the people who want to ban books have been on the side of good. So I'm really trying to do all I can, and the charity is trying to do all we can to help support libraries that are bringing reading to their communities and offering services to everyone in the community, not just the loudest voices.
What were your first experiences with libraries, and when did you fall in love with them?
Well, as a child, I grew up in the library. And maybe you can relate to this where you're from, but it was the only air conditioned building in town when I was a kid. So we all flocked there for very selfish reasons so that we wouldn't be hot anymore. But, I loved reading. I really, as a child, loved the escape. I loved learning about new cultures and new worlds. And the librarians put some of my favorite books in my hands and really fostered me as a reader and as someone who was curious about the world. And I don't know that I'd be here without them.
Yeah, I love our public library system. I love libraries. I just did a podcast episode with librarians, and they give the best book recommendations. I mean, if you want a book recommendation, go see a librarian. And you are correct about the AC because it's actually going to be 118 degrees here today.
Oh my Lord. Well, I'm very sad and also very happy. I'm not going to be in Scottsdale this year for my US tour. But Phoenix has a fantastic public library system.
Yeah.
It really is amazing. And it serves so many different people in the community. So that's a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, it really does. One of my goals this summer was actually to try to visit every branch in the Phoenix Public Library system just to go check something out. I have my regular library where I go pick things up that's close to my house, but it's always fun to be able to explore. You mentioned Scottsdale, so I'm going to guess that you've done events at the Poison Pen.
Correct. Yeah. Yes.
And what has that experience been in the past when you've come to visit Arizona?
Well, my first book tour was right after 9/11.
Wow.
And my publisher said to me, a lot of authors are canceling tours. We would understand if you did. And I said, no, I really want to do it. And one of my first stops was in Scottsdale at Poison Pen with Barbara Peters, who's amazing, and Patrick, and the gang was all there. And we had such a nice turnout because people were ready to embrace the community. I mean, that's the one thing I love about libraries is it's very much a part of the community. It's the beating heart of the community. And readers love, as solitary as we all are, and we love reading and we love being alone with a book, we really love being around people who love books too. And it was such a feeling of community, and that's such a sweet little store there. So it has a very special place in my heart. And, I love Arizona. It's a great state. I love like I said, the Phoenix system. I've done a couple of events there before. So Yeah, I'm not sad to be missing that 116, 118 degree temp, but it's hot enough here in Georgia right now, so I think we're covered.
It is a dry heat, which I feel like that gets kind of obnoxious because people are like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a dry heat. But I will say I was in New York State a couple weeks ago visiting some girlfriends, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be 95 degrees. I'm like, oh, that's child's play. The humidity is really what changes things. So that's like the one thing that I'm trying to tell myself to make myself feel better.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter if your skin is on fire, is what I always say.
At a certain
Hot,
point,
hot.
after 1:15, it's like, yeah, we're staying inside for the whole day.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how you have gone from writing books to getting involved in TV series, which is so exciting. I read that The Good Daughter production was a couple months ago. Is production wrapped up on The Good Daughter?
It had, well, yes and no. I mean, we're at the editorial stage now where we have to put it all together and make it 6 episodes. But yeah, it was 71 days of filming in Atlanta, which I'm
Cool.
very proud of that we kept it here where it's set. And Rose Byrne, Megan Fahey, Brendan Gleeson, Olivia Williams, all star in this. And I mean, they're just amazing. And it was really interesting. I wrote all 6 scripts. So I was on set every day as the writer and the showrunner and the executive producer. So
Wow.
it was a lot. It was really fascinating to see it come together. And, you know, Will Trent is also filmed here in Atlanta. So I've been on the set for that. I'm an executive producer, so I read the scripts, and it's really neat to watch it all come together.
I bet. And what is it like writing scripts for television versus writing novels?
Well, it's a completely different beast in a lot of ways. You know, I can write "We Are All Guilty Here," and you get 5 pages of Emmy thinking her thoughts, and then she says, okay. But you can't really do that in television. You have to find a way to express that through dialogue. I mean, it's a very visual medium, but dialogue is the main engine that keeps the story going. And so it was a very interesting way to learn how to tell a story through dialogue rather than introspection. And, you know, you couldn't really have a character have a long passage of exposition here and there. So it was a puzzle that I enjoyed putting together.
Speaking of the word okay, okay is a word used a lot in We Are All Guilty Here. How do you imagine, when you were writing this, how were you imagine Emmy and Gerald actually pronouncing it?
Okay. And, you know, it has different meanings in different contexts. And, you know, that's a great way to describe the characters because the words they say aren't necessarily the words that, you know, the interpretation of them is not the same with each iteration.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on the situation. And they're very good at reading each other. And it's nice to have someone in your life who understands when you mean okay and when you mean okay.
What is it like for you to see some of these stars acting out things that you've come up with and these stories that you've come up with?
You know, it's a delight when you have such great talent bringing your words to life and putting their interpretation on them. I mean, and just such nice people too. I mean, I know everybody always says that, oh, they're such nice people, but like Rose Byrne is one of the sweetest people I've met in my life. She's just a really good person. So is Megan. I mean, you can see why they're stars because they're very hard workers. They show up ready to do the work and they're prepared and they know their line. I mean, and they're just a pleasure to work with and a pleasure to watch bring life to these words.
Yeah, that's so cool. So tell me a little bit about, I mean, what's next? I know you're gonna be talking about We Are All Guilty Here, but how soon will you start writing your next book if you haven't already started doing that? Which I'm sure you.
Yeah, I've already started it. I've got a little bit done. I've got the story nailed down of what I want to tell, and it's just a matter of sitting down and doing it. So, as I'm finishing my tour for this book, I'm gonna take a little time to rest and take a few naps and hopefully get on the treadmill a little bit and just reset my head. And then I'll spend the rest of the year writing the new book.
I love it. And you mentioned this is going to be a series. This is the first book in a series. Do you know how many at this point you want to do? Do you already have that mapped out?
I don't. But like I said earlier, it's good that I know it's going to be a series because I'm able to really map out certain stories I want to tell. And I think as I get into it, I'll be able to plant more seeds that turn into stories.
As readers are getting ready to pick up this book, what do you hope they take away from it?
Well, I mean, primarily, I want them to have just a really terrific read. There's lots of twists and turns and shocks, and there's a great whodunit in there. But also if it makes them think a little bit about their lives, or if they feel seen, maybe you're a lady whose marriage you're not crazy about, and you're raising a child or two, and you're dealing with parents and all. You'll see your life reflected back in that. I think that's the highest compliment a writer can get is when a reader says they see themselves in one of your characters.
Yeah. Do you ever get writer's block?
Not really. I just think of it as my brain saying you need to take a break and come back to it. I think writer's block is kind of your way of psyching yourself out of doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm not introspective enough to be able to give myself that. I always just figure that means it's time to go for a walk or do something, crazy like vacuum out my kitchen cabinets or whatever, and just put my body to work so my brain can take a break.
All right. I love that. So we are all guilty here. It is out now. Anything else you want to say or tell readers that I haven't asked yet?
Just that I hope they enjoy the book, and if they do, there's going to be more.
Okay, great. Karin, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.